Welcome to Veteran State of Mind. I'm your host, Geraint Jones. Today, back on the podcast by popular demand, we have Mr. John Stryker Meyer. John obviously is a Vietnam veteran we've had on the podcast before. He was a member of MAC v SOG. Basically, these are the guys who would go over the fence, or across the fence, I should say, into Cambodia and Laos during the Vietnam War to disrupt the North Vietnamese army operations there. John's stories are just incredible. I think he's been on Jocko podcast something like 384 times now. He is just an endless font of stories, and he also John's kind of taken the mantle when it comes to becoming the historian of MAC v SOG. So we're very happy to have him on the podcast. I feel very privileged to have him on the podcast. Before we get into it, guys, I just want to say a massive thank you to our sponsors, because as you know, no sponsors, no podcast. First up, Combat Fuel. I want to thank Combat Fuel for sending me some juicy gains. I use their vegan protein. It's salted caramel flavour. If you don't like it, then there's something wrong with you in the head and in the stomach. It is absolutely delicious, guys. Can't recommend it enough. Top tip for you, what I do is, because sometimes with protein shakes, it's nice to feel like you're getting, especially if you're cutting. I'm trying to lose a little weight at the moment. It's nice to feel like you're having something a bit more substantial as a meal, innit? So what I do is, guys, I get a scoop, I put it in a bowl, add a bit of milk to it. Only need about 100 ml. And then you just whip it up and you've got yourself a nice, I was going to say mousse, but I'm going to say souffle, because that sounds even more posh, doesn't it? So get yourself some of that lovely salted caramel vegan protein. That's what I use. I also use the pre-workout. Sometimes I use the pump up. Sometimes I use the regular pre-workout. And sometimes when I'm going full on mad scientist mode, I mix the two of them together and there is copious amounts of gains just all over the place, really. If you want some money off, because I know I was going to say I can't say that word because I'll get me struck off and cancelled. But if you are somebody who is somebody that likes to take care of his money, shall we say, then use the code VSOM at checkout to get yourself a discount. Can't actually remember how much it was. Don't know if I've ever asked, actually, but you do get money off, so just stick the code in. Also, it lets them being able to see how many people are going from there, because let's be honest, if none of you lot are buying the product, there's not much point in them sponsoring the podcast, is there? So how about you do me a favour, I do you a favour, everyone gets a favour. Go to Combat Fuel, use VSOM, VSOM, at checkout. And also, while we're on the sponsor thing, I want to say a big thank you to Zulu Alpha Strap Company. They make bombers, watch straps for alley blokes. They have got some absolutely turbo essence straps going at the moment, guys. They really, really, really up their photo game. I never thought that I would have a bit of a fetish for watches and watch straps, but it turns out that I do. There's only so many searches you can do on the old hubs before you need something new. And right now, what is tickling my fancy is seeing lovely watch straps on the wrists of frontline operators around the world. At Zulu Alpha Straps on social media or ZuluAlphaStraps.com. Check them out, guys. They have all kinds of things going on with other companies. They work with Sangin Instruments. They're over in the States. They've got something else. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about it, actually. But I will say that they have some Ali partnerships coming out. Go and check them out, guys. Get yourself a watch. We don't have a code for them, but just drop him in his DMs. Just drop him his DMs to just tell him that you heard about him on the podcast here. He's a good bloke. He's a fellow Welshman, and we all want to support veteran-owned companies, don't we? All right, guys. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode because it is a mega one. Please give a very warm welcome to Mr. John Stryker Meyer. John, welcome back to the podcast, mate. How are you doing?
Good. It's good to be back, sir. How's it going on your end?
I'm not going to lie. Lockdown has probably been one of the best things that's ever happened for me. As much as I disagree with it on principle, in practice, it's great for a writer. It takes all the distractions out of. It stops me from enjoying myself, I suppose. Is what I was saying, and that makes me a lot more productive. How about you? How was the move up to Tennessee?
We're in the middle. We closed out the house in Oceanside, packed everything. My dear bride worked extra hard the last 2 weeks, wrapping up all the final details. And so we're here together now, beginning the house hunt tomorrow.
Oh, awesome. So you live in Oceanside, were you? Right by Pendleton?
That's where we used to live last 30 years. Now,
okay,
we're a proud Tennessean.
Yeah, well, you getting out at the right time, mate. That place is going absolutely bonkers.
Oh, yeah.
So, John, today is an anniversary for you, right?
Oh, yeah. 52 years ago today, man.
Well,
it was the day.
Let's get into it. I'm just going to shut up and just let you take us on the story if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, October 5th, we had the historic Lynn Black mission where his 9-man team came up against 10,000 NVA. Them and the air assets inflicted 90% casualties. And we were on bright light standby to go in, but they canceled the bright light, which was an emergency team to go in to help a team that's been wounded, etc. So we launched October 6th, the next day. We launched into a target Echo 4, had a good insertion. Early on, when we were in the jungle, we got overrun by monkeys.
So how did that happen? What's getting overrun by monkeys like?
Well, in the beginning, it's terrifying because you hear all this noise in the jungle coming towards you. You're going like, WTF. Everybody gets their hand grenades out. You get the pins ready, full automatic. Everybody's online. And then it's monkeys. So the monkeys overran us. By early afternoon, they had trackers that were on us. And when we set up at night at the RON for our rest overnight spot, one tracker had come within maybe 25, 30 feet and fired one round in the air. So during the night, we heard some activity around the perimeter. And at 2 o'clock in the morning on October the 7th, I thought I heard somebody in front of our Claymore, so I blew it. And so, you can imagine a Claymore in the middle, in the middle of the dead of night going off. My 1-0 wasn't too happy with me. We had a miscommunication. I told him I was going to blow it. He said no, and I thought he said go.
That's a good lesson to learn for people, though. You've got to have, you got to take that kind of stuff into consideration and have, have like set words that sound very differently, because when you're trying to, hush in the middle of the night like that.
And so anyways, first light, that morning we moved out and we moved, the traditional way, which would move 10 minutes, wait 10 minutes, because when you do it that way, you can listen to the jungle. And around about 1 o'clock, we had to break out of the jungle because there was like a little animal path that went up the mountains on a steep angle. And we went out on that path just to get out of the jungle to try to get away from the trackers. At one point, about 1:30 or so, and we got to halfway up that trail, I was in the back. I was the number 5 man on the 6-man team. Sal was the tail gunner. And I heard Sal hiss. I turned around and he pointed to where we had come out of the jungle. There were 2 NVA standing there, tall NVA. They may have been Chinese. We couldn't tell. But they were standing there maybe about 100 yards away, and they were standing at Port Arms. Yeah, it was really strange. That's my exact reaction. Like, WTF, what's going on? So Sal was like, D, let's get out of here. So I told Wolken what happened, and Don, instead of continuing on the trail, we headed straight up the side of this mountain, found a little knoll, and put together a team perimeter up on top of this knoll. I tried to make radio contact. Around about 2 o'clock, I was on the radio, and then Hep and Sal and Fook all opened fire. And the NVA was coming at us up the hill. And they just blew them back down the hill. We beat them, as usual, in the opening fire. Our guys changed magazines, gained fire superiority. And by the time they were doing a second magazine, I had a can of fruit. I had opened up a can of peaches, and I was just about to get my first peach. And all the gunfire, I spilled a little bit of the apricot or the peach juice on my car 15. These guys were going to war. I'm sitting there messing around with my damn fruit. So I put it down, go back on full automatic. We gained fire superiority, which was the key thing. And then for over 2 hours, we tried to get radio contact. We didn't, but they kept coming at us. And at one point, when we had like a front area in front of the main hill, they came up at us, and a little bit to the left. At one point, they were making another move at us, and I was firing into the jungle, and then Fook, who was running point, had come down by my side, and he opened fire. So when I'm firing in the jungle, I thought, oh man, he's firing right over my shoulder, and I couldn't hear. You know what it's like to be on the wrong end of a muzzle blast on full automatic. So I didn't realize it. But the next day, when we were back at base, I talked to Hep, my interpreter, said, hey, ask Fook why he shot over my shoulder. And Fook said, no, I didn't shoot over your shoulder. There were NVA coming up the hill you didn't see. I killed them. And so like my tunnel vision was so focused on the enemy in front, I didn't see anything on my side. And Fook literally saved my life right there and then.
That wasn't because of the peaches, no? That's such an easy thing to do, though, isn't it? Is to get tunnel vision in a fight.
Oh, clearly, because we had been hit several times at that point when that happened. And in between, I was trying to make radio commo, and we never got anybody. And then around about, after this has been going on for a couple of hours, Wolken came over to me and goes, look at what they're doing in the jungle. And I couldn't see it at first, but he said, they're stacking up the bodies. Because we killed so many, they would come right to the brink of the jungle. And as soon as we saw them, we blow them back in. And he said, they're stacking up the bodies because they want to get the bodies higher so they can climb up on top of the dead bodies and shoot down at us.
Jeez.
So around 4, Cubby came in. Spider Parks was flying Cubby that day. So Cubby would be our forward air controller, an Air Force 02. And then the Cubby rider is a Green Beret who had ground experience. So that was the way SOG worked all of our missions on the ground.
And is it, sorry to interrupt, but is that a role that you guys rotated through, or was it like a post that somebody held for an entirety of a tour?
It would be a post that was held by a senior recon guy, a man who had been running recon. Okay. And then at some point, either their time and duty, like they'd been running recon for 6 months, was time for a rotation, or like in Don Wolken's case, after that mission, Don then got a job flying Covey. Nice. So it's just on a demand basis. Sometimes we had Covey riders that, when the Covey was shot down and lost, then there was an instant opening. So then you tried to always fill it with an experienced 1-0 or somebody who'd been on the ground enough, so that way when I'm talking as a on the ground, I can talk to somebody with experience. And there's a better understanding. It really helps the coordination of air assets, as well as to have a friendly voice talking to you.
1-0 team commander, was it?
Right. On our the 1-0 is the team leader. The 1-1 is the assistant team leader. The 1-2 will be the radio operator. And on this mission, Don was the 1-0. Jim Davison, he was actually the 1-2 because he had less experience on the team. He came in from the 173rd Airborne, and he had a tour of duty with them. Good soldier. And then I carried the radio, even though I was the assistant team leader. And then we had 3 indigenous troops, Sal, who was our Vietnamese team leader, counterpart to the 1-0, Hep, who was the interpreter, who spoke 4 or 5 languages. And Hep and Sal had been in the secret war for close to 3 years by 1968. And fortunately, when Idaho got wiped out in May of 1968, both Hep and Sal were, they missed that mission. Other team members got rotated to go on that mission. So we were able to build the team around them. And then the last team member was Fook, and he was our point man. And a good troop. He had come from North Vietnam 10 years earlier, came down with his family, just a really good soldier. And so after 2 hours of contact, we finally made radio contact. And then with Spider, we began to bring in airstrikes. And one of the first airstrikes came from the Phantom jets, the F-4. And when we did it, Cubby said, don't forget, because he's going to come in with a gun run. And they remind us, we heard this in training, when we did our in-country training. But it's one thing to talk about it. But it's another thing when you hear the bullets will land in the jungle before you hear the sound of the aircraft. And you know what that's like. Well, that was my first experience. We had a fast mover. He came in with a gun run, and sure enough, man, that jungle was getting torn up long before we heard the sound of his jet engines.
It'd give you a bit of a scare.
Oh, absolutely. And he brought it in pretty close. He brought it in where we asked him to put it. And so for the next 2 hours, we directed airstrikes at the hill behind us and on both sides of us. And then in the back, we did occasional gun runs and things like that. And then right after the fast mover, we had the A-1 Sky Raider, which is the single propeller World War II aircraft. At the end of World War II, it was designed for close air support, and they're wonderful. We love them. And the first run was napalm. And we always assumed that the majority of the pilots were Southerners because the first guy that came in, I talked directly to the pilot because the Spider had run low on gas, and he had linked us with the aircraft pilot directly. And the pilot said, "Y'all put your head down. It's crispy critter time." And you just, things like that, you just never forget. And so that Southern gentleman came in with that napalm run so close that it just takes away your air. Literally, just sucks, it just consumes any air around it. And then for the first time, we smelled human flesh burn. He killed so many people with the napalm run. And then the gunships arrived. And then for over 2 hours, we were in contact. They continued to make new runs at us. We made gun runs. And then when it got close to last light, we had maybe 15, 20 minutes of light left. We were getting low on ammo. And Spider said, "We got to try to get you to an LZ." He spotted a patch of elephant grass. Now, elephant grass can be anywhere from 8, maybe to 12 feet tall. It's not quite like bamboo, but it's a very thick grass. And they said, we're going to have a king bee come in. You've got to go. I forget what the direction was, but we went towards that elephant grass. And it was only maybe 10, 12 yards. It took us 10 minutes to get there because it was so thick pushing through it. At one point, I fell down. Don Walken ran over me. He fell down, and I ran over his dumb ass. And that's the way it went. But you had to break down to get to the area, and there was a king bee. The king bee was the South Vietnamese Air Force, the 219 Special Operations Squadron, and that time was Captain Tin. And he came in and hovered because he couldn't land in the elephant grass. So he was hovering about 6 to 8 feet off the ground. And this was the old H-34 with the one doors on the right side of the helicopter. And then it had 2 steps down, and it had the long struts on each side. So when we got to the helicopter, we secured the area a little bit, and then Don and I started throwing the team members on one at a time. They would go up and get in the helicopter. Then they would put down suppressing fire through the other windows. And then it came down to me and Don. And Don goes, "You're going in." I just grabbed him by his shirt. He's about 220, 230 pounds. I was 170. But at that moment in time, I felt like Superman. I just grabbed him and picked him up and tossed him up towards the helicopter. And he grabbed the stair, and then our guys pulled him into the helicopter. Then I jumped up, and then Don pulled me into the chopper. And the thing about that helicopter pilot, Captain Tin, he had saved John Walton in August, 3 months earlier. And he was sitting there. I'll never forget it, because right before I threw Walken in, I looked up at him, and he was sitting there. The pilot's seat's on the right side. He was looking down at me. He goes, you could just see him, cool, calm. I always said that, cool like a Rocky Mountain stream. Okay, anytime you guys are ready, we're ready to go now.
I mean, it must be so hard holding that position like that. And then you with the weight of you guys getting on and stuff. It's like it's not as easy as people think.
Oh no, it's critical, and you understand that better. And here's the other thing: 2 days later, he came back to base. That helicopter had 48 different bullet holes in it, including one through the propellers.
Oh, really?
And so while we're throwing people on, as each guy gets on, before they get on, we empty a full magazine towards where the enemy gunfire is coming. We had gun runs, and one of the gun runs came so close that was the first time I had hot shell casings that came out from the 7.62 and landed in the collar and burnt the skin on the back of my neck. That's how close the gun support was.
And that's from is it Scarfaces, was it, the helicopters?
No, for that final gun run, we had Scarface earlier in the day. And that final gun run came in was the judge and the executioner.
Oh, wow. What a call sign. What a call sign.
Isn't that incredible for gunships? Yeah.
That's brilliant. I love Scarface, but those are even better.
Yeah, these gentlemen were from the Americal division, and their call sign was the Muskets and the 176th. And they were just completely fearless. So the judge was Mike Arlene. The executioner was Dan Cook. And on the final mission, the final gun run before we were extracted, I told Cubby, told them, and they came in with that really close gun run. And that way, I got in the helicopter. And then as the helicopter was lifting off, it was almost dark. And I was down to my last magazine, over 600 rounds, my last hand grenade. And as we're lifting off, as we continue to gain altitude, the jungle, it was in a weird way, it was beautiful. You had all of these dark green, right? The emerald jungle lit up with all these pretty little red lights, which were gunfire, with the green tracers coming at us. And on one hand, it was beautiful. On the other hand, it's like, let's get the fuck out of here, please. And so when we finally got away, got enough elevation, altitude, and he flew straight south for a few minutes. And there's that moment in time where you went from all that apocalyptic death roar, the gunships, us firing, the NVA shooting at us, and there all of a sudden there's nothing but the helicopter. And we looked off to the east, and there's this beautiful sunset. It was the most beautiful sunset we'd ever seen, And on this mission, on a personal note, at one point I looked back at Sal, because when I came on the team, when Spider introduced me to the team at the end of May of '68, Sal had turned to Hep and said, he's too tall, his feet are too big, and he looks stupid. So I had to earn my respect. So on this day, when I looked at Sal looked at me and gave me a nod. And that meant more to me than anything during the tour of duty, was to finally earn his respect, because he had been fighting the war for 3 years.
Wow, 3 years.
And thanks to he and Hep, our interpreter. So both of them at that time, they knew what the war was. They knew how to fight it. They knew the enemy, the ever-increasing pressure that we were getting in the field. And so to earn his respect, that was a big deal. So we get back to base. We land. I climb up to the window, because they have like little steps built into the helicopter, so you can climb up to see the pilot. Well, I climbed up. Come on in. There's a floor show. I'll buy you a drink. And Captain Chin goes, no, thank you, but I'm going to fly home. My wife is holding dinner for us. Can you imagine?
Yeah. I mean,
so he came back in 2 days, and we told him, you never buy another drink here ever again. And so I get the team. We go back in. There is the floor show, because nobody was out there. Normally, when a team is in a big firefight, there'd be a lot of people up on the launch pad, the helicopter pad there. They'd be like, hey, welcome back. Here's a beer, Not this night. There was just one little guy with a truck. And he came out, picked us up.
Why was there only the one guy?
Because there was a floor show.
What's a floor show? Sorry, I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's we had a clubhouse, and they would bring in a show of girls that would sing with a little band.
Right. Okay.
So it's
now
a
it makes
floor
sense.
show. Yeah. And so this one was really special. I think it may have been an Australian floor show. Again, don't quote me on that, but there was a floor show. So we go into base. Don went right in to give the debrief to S2. I got food for the guys and drinks and stuff. I go to the club. Everybody goes, "Hi, yeah, good to see you." I got the drinks, and that was it. Nothing. So I go down and feed the guys, and then went back to the club later that night. And I was talking to John Walton, because John Walton was his team on August 3rd. They had been overrun 3 times, and the 1-0 had called the airstrike in on his team. And when that gun run came in, it was a SPAD, an A1 Skyraider came in. They made the gun run. It killed one of the team members, and the radio operator was Tom Cunningham, who had just come on the team and worked a week earlier. And they 2 rounds hit him. One round hit the 20 mic round, hit his radio, the Prick 25 on his back. And when it exploded, all the shrapnel from it and the round severely wounded the 1-0, the team leader. The second round hit him in the leg and flipped him in the air. And Tom had the out-of-body experience of watching his body flying through the air after being shot by a Skyraider. And he remembered watching himself landing on the ground, and he was wondering, like, am I still alive? And he called his name to himself, and when he heard his name, the out-of-body experience ended right there. Well, Captain Tin came in, picked up that 6-man team, and on that day, when Tin had come in for John, he came in because it was August the 3rd, 68. It was a hot day. They were high in the mountains, and he could only pick up 3 team members. So John put the 2 wounded people on there, a 3rd member, and then the helicopter left. The next 2 King Bees couldn't get in. They got shot out. Well, Captain Tin came back because he was a senior pilot. He came back and landed and picked up John Walton and his team member, the only other guy not wounded on the team. So now they couldn't take off. But again, with the King Bee, you had the struts, and he raised up the back. He went downhill, all under enemy fire, got enough lift to get over the trees, but not enough transitional lift to get out. He turned, went down to a valley, and did a couple laps in the valley to get enough forward momentum where he could do transitional lift to get the team out. And he did.
Wow.
So the same Captain Tin that saved my bacon on and our Spike Team Idaho bacon on October 7th had earlier saved John in quite spectacular fashion. And so 2 days later, he came back. He told us 48 holes in that helicopter, that King Bee, the night they pulled us out.
I'm sure those weren't the only 2 times that he did it either. He did that a lot, right?
Oh, he did. Well, he was part of the King Bees, the King Bee pilots that have been there. They were veterans. They were skilled aviators. They're completely fearless. And they're as good as the Americans, in our opinion. And, there was a couple that maybe weren't as good as, like Captain Tin, Captain Tuong, who recently passed away, sadly, and Lieutenant Trung. Those guys, I can't tell you how many times they pulled us out. And we were always pulled out. It would be under enemy fire. The only question was just how much. And that was part of the standard operating procedure.
And did they come to America after the war?
Some did, yes. Captain Tuong came to America after being incarcerated. Well, they call it the re-education camp.
Oh, nice.
But the communists wanted to try to make these guys think things right. Mm-hmm. So Captain Tuong escaped after 8 years. Captain Tin took him 13 and a half years. And when he escaped, he came to America with one of the religious groups and they found him a job in North Dakota. Can you imagine that? You're in South Vietnam, and yeah. So they sent him up to North Dakota. He worked there for several years, and now he finally moved into an apartment or a home with his son. He lives out in Arizona now.
Sounds like a hell of a guy.
Oh, fearless. And one time for a Captain Tin story, he was deeply religious, a Catholic. And he always told us that when he flew in, like when they were en route to the target, his co-pilot would fly and he would pray. When it came time for the insertion or for the extraction, he would personally take over command of the aircraft. And then he would come over. One day he got shot down. The NVA knocked his King Bee out of the sky. He was able to crash land, and he was startled. He couldn't believe that he got shot down. He went back to church, and every day he was in church at the altar for several days, begging God for forgiveness. That must have really pissed off God because I got shot down. Without thinking the odds were against it, because these guys were flying for years.
Yeah, because I'm guessing these guys didn't have a break. It was like an American or a British soldier in World War II. You were in it for the duration of the war, right?
Exactly. And the really good King Bee pilots came to America in 63 and 64, were trained at Fort Rucker. And so some came, they couldn't even speak English. So they had to do interpreter and then train them how to fly, and then try to give them some basic English skills.
That story about him coming down over the trees and then going through the valley. Some people just speak machine, don't they? It's like they some people can drive, but then there's other people who are just born to drive. And it's the same with flying. Like somebody like that. I mean, that guy was just born to be in a cockpit, wasn't he?
Fearless and just a great guy. Here he was, a family man. After our missions, he would fly back to Da Nang and get dinner with his wife. It's kind of like, oh my God.
I mean, again, it's a very different experience of a war, isn't it? It's like your family are there because, we touched on this last time. The communists do not play by the same rules as Americans. So I'm guessing that these guys' families were at risk all the time too.
Absolutely. And they had to be very careful where they were, where they're located, very low profile. I don't have any more details on it. I just know that they were really careful. That's all I can tell you.
It's a very similar one. Like it's similar to the Iraq thing, especially Iraq. With people, you working with Iraqi guys, and then they don't come back to base one day, and you find out they got murdered in their home, and I think, because in Britain and America we have this thing of going on deployments and coming back, we forget sometimes that a war's going on 24/7 where, to some people who don't get to do a deployment, they're there all the time. John, I got a bunch of questions that I've just been noting down on that.
Sure.
One of the ones I want to get into, I know we have some guys listening who are like, they'll geek out about what you used to carry. So Can you go in to tell us about, you mentioned claymores, you mentioned the radio. Can you just kind of talk us through what you had as your personal kind of equipment going out on these patrols?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, we had a Car 15, which was the modified M16. It had a collapsible stock. It had a shorter barrel on it, so it was more maneuverable for the jungle. And it was just a great weapon. That was the weapon of choice for most of the recon teams in SOG up until 1970, when more of the teams began to carry RPDs. But in my case, myself and all the other team members, with the exception of the Grenadier, he would carry the M79 and then a 45 caliber. So my personal load would be 600 plus rounds for the Car 15, 5.56, and then 10 to 12 rounds for the M79, another 10, maybe 11 hand grenades for good luck, then smoke grenades, and we'd have different colors. You have the purple, yellow, and a green. Tried to stay away from the green, but you want something that was more visible. But you had to rotate the colors, and then red, because the NVA would monitor our frequencies. And Lynn Black, one of the lessons we learned from Lynn Black's mission was just how much the NVA listened. and they would try to pop the same color of smoke, like with helicopters coming in, either for a gun run or for a pickup. They would try to match the color that the recon team would pop with fatal results. And like I said, on Lynn Black's mission, they lost 2 helicopters. They lost a King Bee and they lost a Jolly Green Giant that day because the NVA had played games with the smoke in a fatal way. And so we carried the smoke, then a couple of small smoke grenades, and that would be our weapon. Sometimes we would carry a 22 standard high power with a silencer, and that could be used for dogs, or if you're on a trail to shoot someone to try to injure them enough, you capture a live POW.
Oh, okay.
So we only carried that a few times, and I would usually have the other American carry the 22 because I also carried the radio, an extra battery, the PRC-25 FM radio, and then the usual stuff, a compass. We had to carry a gas mask at all times, and it was big, cumbersome. We carried a Swiss seat, which would be a 6-foot piece of rope that could tie into a Swiss seat, and then you put a D-ring into it, and then if we had to get extracted by rope from the helicopter would hover and drop the rope. It'd be 150 feet long, and then there'd be a sandbag to get through the jungle. A D-ring would be on it, hook into it, and then get lifted out through the jungle. And then we had, mirror, syrettes, a sweater, and then a very small rain jacket, like a small plastic rain jacket. It had a little hood, and it would just go down to your waist. And if you weren't careful during a rainstorm, if you moved forward too much, the rain in your back would run right down the crack of your pants. And
sound nice.
Those are the main things. And of course, we had a survival axe. I carried a survival axe for chopping through jungle vegetation, things like that.
So how much water are you taking out on missions, or are you drinking water that you get in the jungle?
Yeah, it would depend. Sometimes prefer just to carry one canteen. You start out with one canteen in base because it's less weight that way. And then we could tell from the map review and then from Covey if there were streams or places to get water. And so in Laos, a lot of targets we were able to just to carry 1 or 2 canteens of water. We always had the water purification tablets. So if we found water, you load the canteen. Of course, we do it, strategically, one guy at a time. Take turn. One guy would get the water, next guy would get the water, while everybody else was on guard. Because as you know, from your time on the ground, that's one of your most vulnerable times. And people are looking. Usually there would be people setting up at water sites. But you're in the middle of the jungle, we are still cautious. And it wasn't as dangerous as, say, being in a desert environment or in the mountains of Afghanistan where you don't have much cover.
Yeah, we had in Afghanistan, we had the local, there was a well that we used to have to draw water from. And how we never got attacked there, the only thing I can think is that the locals had to deal with the Taliban, that we didn't know, because it was like a UNICEF well. So the only thing I can think of, the deal was like the well is off limits. Because every time we went there, I thought, this is fucking crazy. So how much are we talking in weight here, John? Because 600 rounds is not lightweight, and then the radio, I'm assuming, was a big old lump of metal.
Right.
So can you remember how much?
Yeah, I weighed it on a scale one time, but it was kind of like a clumsy weighing. It had to be at least 80, 85, maybe 90 pounds.
Whoa. Well, that's all your kit, or is that just the radio?
The radio, and then I had a battery for it, and then of course the extra hand grenades would be in a backpack, and then we had you had a cable with the microphone and a handset on it, and we carried that under the cable from the radio, go under the arm, and put the handset in your jacket, so that if anybody saw you on first glance, they couldn't tell right away who was carrying the radio. Because, I'm assuming this is true in your war too, where the first person you kill is the radio operator.
Radio operators and machine gunners.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and But no, because I mean, by the time we got around, like now, almost everybody has an antenna popping out or something now. You've got all the way down to fire team commanders and stuff. So there's a lot more antennas. But because you actually carried, when you commanded a team, you carried your own radio too, didn't you?
Right, and we had the emergency ultra high frequency, an ERC-10. It was a small handheld, so any aircraft could hear the signal, and then come back and home in on that signal, and then we could talk to them on the ultra high frequency, and then tell them we're going to transfer it to FM.
So, John, you're fighting these long, like, well, let's not even talk about fighting. Just being in these in the jungle for these extended amount of time with that amount of kit on your back, and then fighting on top of it. Well, how did you cope with the fatigue when you were in these fights? Was it just a matter of adrenaline that got you through it, or did you ever see anybody that was kind of like was a what you could call them like a heat casualty or a casualty from dehydration and stuff?
Because we were in the jungle, most of the time it was cool enough where you just had general fatigue, and during the summer months, even then, getting into the jungle itself was a cooler environment. So we didn't have heat fatigue, but you're aware of it, and you always took your salt tablets and water, and made sure you drank a lot of water. So that was not a major problem. Now, some of the teams that were down in Cambodia further south, where the vegetation would be thinner, you'd have general fatigue and as well as the heat issues. But in Laos, at least it was a little bit cooler when you're on the ground, triple canopy. I mean, it's 150 feet of jungle above you. And it's a little bit cooler environment, at least in our case.
And that's just because of the shadow, is it?
Correct. Yeah, everything was dark. I mean, it was dark and thick. I mean, a lot of times when we were on patrol, if I was behind the point man, or if I was the second man behind the point man, I wouldn't see the point man. I could only see the man in front of me who could see the point man, because just that thick. That's the kind of movement. So we kept fairly close order of march in the triple canopy jungle.
And what about sound? Like, how does sound carry in that kind of density?
It carries, oddly enough, because the jungle has its own sounds, its own environment. And so anything we did, being careful not to crack any branches or twigs, things like that, or anything metallic. So, of course, everything we carried was taped down. Everything from the pins on your hand grenades to any metallic object on your body. It was taped.
Do you still have this thing now where you see somebody in an airport and they've got straps flapping everywhere and things not tied down? Does it get? Do you want to go over there and put a bit of tape on it?
Yeah, I do. I want to tape them down.
I'm the same way, man. I hate it.
Oh yeah, you could be a security risk, dude. Do you know that?
Yeah, it's funny. I think that's something that all military people have when they see like straps hanging off people's bags. You just want to get on there and get some black tape on it.
There you go.
John, when you're patrolling in the jungle, like you see the movies and things like that about Vietnam. There's always, and I've read about it in books and stuff. Is the booby trap threat? Where you're operating, was there that kind of booby trap threat on the paths and that kind of thing?
No, because we were in the jungle. That's why we stayed away from the trails.
Gotcha. Okay.
Majority of our time, a trail was something we treated with a high degree of caution. And when we moved in the jungle, like I said, it would be 10 and 10 march or move, not really a march, but you move through the jungle cautiously without making noise, try to keep sound discipline. And then when you came to a trail, we had an entire SOP set up for trail crossing, how you would cross it one at a time, set up security. Once you got across the trail, one person would look north, one look south, then the third guy would come across, and the last man would try to remove any footsteps or make it appear as though you couldn't tell that somebody had crossed the trail.
How much time did you spend practicing that kind of thing?
We had quite a bit, particularly in the beginning, because after Idaho got wiped out in May, we did an extreme amount of training, because Spider was the 1-0. He had the experience and worked with Sal and Hep closely. And so we would go all the immediate after after actions, trying to think, quick reaction drills, things like that. How if you got ambushed from the front or you got hit from the side, you get hit from the back, and just how you react to it over and over again. So when we were on patrol, if we did make contact, it would be automatic. You're not thinking about what you're going to do. You're focusing on the enemy to get the most fire towards them, as well as preserving team integrity.
And who's the driving force? Like, who's the person that's coming into the tent and saying, "Right, guys, we're going to go out and we're going to go and practice our drills and our operating procedures"? Who is kind of behind that?
Well, with our team, because Sal had so much experience, Spider, Don Wolken, who followed Spider as the 1-0 before I became the 1-0, we all respected them. So it wouldn't be like the Marine Corps. You come in and the gunny goes, "Today we're going to go on a 20-mile forced march, pack your ruck, blah, blah, blah." First, we'd come in and say, "We want to do training today. What do you think? What do you recommend?" And of course, there was the basic training that we all knew we had to do. And so Sal would go along with that, and then he would talk to his people, and then for any improved tactics, things like that.
I think that's a really important lesson for young people listening, young future leaders or current people in junior positions of leadership, is that you don't need to wait to have your gunnery sergeant come in or someone like that. You got to get out there and practice in your team until, like you said, things are second nature. Because I bet there was times where those bits of training, like that instant reaction, saved your life.
Absolutely. And anytime you make contact, the South Vietnamese on our team and the Americans would always win the reload race. Even though the AK had more rounds, when we reloaded, we would gain fire superiority. And that's the only saving grace, really. Basic, right down to the fundamental stuff.
Yeah, I suppose marksmanship skills, your marksmanship skills, and your, like you said, your weapon handling, and there's something really important about training with noise as well, isn't there? Like to train with live rounds so you get used to that noise. Because one of these things that a lot of, I don't want to say third world, but let's say less developed armies, they quite often, the first time they're firing live rounds is when they're in the fight for the first time. And it's a very different situation, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we believed in that time on the range. We would do patrols in the village, outside the village. We set up ambushes, local ambushes, to train just to get the team together so that, and yes, our live fire drill, we would go through hundreds of rounds every day. Because so much of our patrolling was in the jungle, it wasn't firing from the shoulder. It was firing from the hip. You carried the weapon right down low, and when you opened fire, that first rounds would be all right from your hip.
So what was the kind of like the reaction to the enemy that you fire? What would you put through? How many rounds would you kind of, what was your, I mean, obviously it might change when it actually happened, but what was your kind of like the standard operating procedure for if you took contact from the enemy?
We want fire superiority. Mm-hmm. And so be full automatic, quick change, full automatic again. And if necessary, a third reload, until you knew you had fire superiority. Because in those seconds, if not, the war's over. The game is gone. You're done. And so that would be the first day. After that, it would be just based on how many are coming at you. And then, as you know, when you can go through ammo pretty quick. And at some point, you really have to have ammo discipline so that you don't go too far through your load, but keep enough so you're guaranteed to stay in the fight.
This 600 rounds that you were carrying, was that already all in magazines?
Yes.
Okay, because I think that's something that's worth noting as well, because you would have been fucked, like if you had to, like when you're on those grassy knolls, if you're having to reload magazines, like that would not have been a good time.
Yeah, that would not be a good scenario. We definitely tried to avoid that at all costs. Yeah, no, everybody carried full magazines, and the only person that didn't would be the grenadier, who would have a bandolier with the M79 rounds, the 40 mic rounds in them.
How are you firing that? Like, is that M79 getting almost used like a mortar when they're that close to you?
It could be both, yes. And The first round we always carried would be a canister round, which would have either buckshot, and later the Frenchman and Lynn Black developed the flechette rounds that could go out like the flechettes that were in the CBUs, cluster bomb units, and they would make an M79 round with that. And so that if there's close contact, that first round, anything's close is killed. It gets the job done. And then in the jungle, there wouldn't be too much indirect fire. It would be direct fire. You look for lanes of fire. Tuan, our M79 guy, was just amazing what he could do with his M79. And it would be mostly HE, high explosive. And then in critical situations, we might dump some gas on the enemy to break contact or to cause some confusion within their ranks.
Is that why you carried your masks all the time, is it?
Always. Well, and plus we had reports of our teams in Laos that had been hit by the NVA by gas.
Really?
Absolutely. It never happened to us, but because of it, and that gas mask was the biggest pain in the ass. Because it was big, you had a canvas case for it. When it rained, you had to make sure that the filters always were dry. Because if the filters got wet, then the gas mask wouldn't work. So part of the regular gear checking was always going through, see what the status of the filters on the gas mask was. Because if you needed it, man, there's no two ways around it. You wanted to make sure it worked.
I bet that's easier said than done in the jungle as well, you know.
Oh, yeah. It's like just practicing with tear gas, for example. When you practice with that stuff, there's things that go wrong.
Oh, yeah.
And in the field, if you're in a live fire condition and you want to pop gas, man, but it really does alter the battlefield for at least momentarily. And sometimes it's what you need is get that break.
Yeah, I think that's a great point for people is like you usually have to do something has to change usually for you to be able to extract from contact one way or another, be it a gun run or smoke HE or in your case gas. There's usually something that needs to happen for you to be able to break contact, quote unquote, safely. For you to get away.
Right, and that's where the claymores came in handy. Particularly, we have the different fuses cut, and the most radical of which would be the 5-second fuse. And to put that 5-second, we used them quite effectively on Thanksgiving Day when we came up against a couple of point and a tail security element from NVA divisions. They came at us hard, but the claymore, we put down a few of the 5-second fuses along with the conventional claymore.
Right, I think it just goes to show what a great weapon that is, that it's still around. We're talking 50 years later. How many claymores would you be taking out on average onto a patrol?
The Americans would always carry at least 2, maybe 3. Then every Vietnamese team member would have at least 1 claymore with the handheld device to fire it. So on a 6-man team, we'd have at least 5.
You putting those down behind you as you're extracting, or are you trying to put those out in front if you get the chance before?
If we have a chance, yeah, because particularly like when a helicopter comes in, we would be able to identify the area that the most severe enemy activity would be coming from. So we put down a claymore, run the wire out, or put down a claymore with a fuse, maybe 15, 20-second delay. So that would give us a chance to get away from it. And then there was one target where we were getting strapped on ropes, and we tied a Willie Peter to the claymore and had a time fuse on it. So as we're getting extracted, the thing was pointing down. So when that claymore went off, it also had white phosphorus that exploded over the NVA. That was pretty devastating. But it gave us, a few precious seconds on extraction.
Yeah, that sounds like a horrible thing to be on the end of, a fucking claymore and white phosphorus.
Can you imagine?
Jesus Christ, no. I would not want to be on the end of that fucker. I was just thinking, because you, like you said, you're in the jungle, you got this triple canopy, the noise in there carries. It must have been so hard for you to get comms. Like you said, it was difficult anyway for you to have comms on the radio. And then you've got all this noise going on around you. Can you tell us a bit more about the that element of, because I think people can picture quite well what a battle looks like, but can you like explain a bit more about like the sounds and the smells
Of the jungle itself?
of fighting in it, especially like on the anniversary or that day? Let's concentrate on the anniversary of it is today. Like,
Yes.
what was the noise and the smell and everything like? What were all those kind of senses?
My editor didn't like it, but I liked it. Apocalyptic death roar. Because you have everybody trying to kill each other. AKs, CAR-15s, frag grenades. And then you have autocordite. And then once you began running in, the aircraft would come in, you'd have napalm, smoke from the napalm, smoke from the cluster bomb units, and then smoke from any gun runs that came in. And sometimes, like what Lynn Black had on October 5th, they had trouble with so much smoke hanging over the combat zone that they had to delay running airstrikes because they couldn't see accurately where the team was. And so the sounds and the smells, it would be amazing because just everything changes, when you're trying to kill each other in combat. And then there's these jarring moments. Like the other thing that was surprising, particularly that day, was after the second or third round of magazines, there's this silence because everybody ran out of bullets. And the only sound is people changing their magazines and slamming a fresh magazine into their weapon. So there's that moment. And, by that time, you're on adrenaline. Your adrenaline's full flow. And so a minute becomes days. And so when that happens, it felt like it was an exaggerated period of silence. All you could hear is click, 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 and then the bolt slamming forward. And then eventually you get back to the firefights. And then you have the smells. And with the napalm runs, the burning of human flesh. And sometimes you just get the smell of blood because like on so many bodies were stacked up on Echo 4, you could smell the blood because there's just a certain odor to human blood, any blood. And there you are on the ground trying to survive. And then in the meantime, you got insects crawling over you, flies trying to get into your apricots, other kind of various insects and things that were out there. You hear them buzzing around. Then later, when there would be those moments of silence, the jungle noise would come back. You begin to hear birds. You begin to hear chirps and burps and things like this. And then somebody opens fire. Then the jungle life gets quiet again. A little bit of that back and forth,
You're talking about being able to smell the blood and maybe even taste the blood in the air, and then knowing that these enemy soldiers are being stacked up. There's so many dead of them. You're a religious man, you're I don't know if you're a God-fearing man, but you're a God-believing man. How does that reconcile the fact that, thou shalt not kill, but then you've been killing a lot of people that day? How did that give you any kind of, did you have any kind of moral dilemma with that?
The way it unfolded was, we had the combat where you don't think about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that night when John Walton and I were talking back at base, anytime a team would come back, other team members would come up, try to learn lessons or anything you may have learned. And so we would always go pick the other team's brains. Well, this night was my night with John. And we had become good friends by October. And we're talking. And then at one point he goes, "Did you kill anybody today?" And in the jungle, a lot of times that you would see the weapons firing, you might see an image, but you don't see a face. Like it's close, but you don't clearly see the person who's opening fire on you, and you kill them. In this case, I was on the radio, and remember earlier we were talking about Fook, how he had killed a couple of NVA that were coming up the hill. Well, later I began to focus on that area. And that right side of our perimeter was mine as the day wore on. And when I was directing airstrikes, talking to Spider or Pat Watkins, we would direct the airstrikes. Well, at one point, I was talking to Spider, and I told Spider, wait one, because I could see something coming up the hill. I couldn't tell what it was until it got a little bit closer. And what it was the enemy, his little ass would stick up as he's coming up the hill, crawling. And I told Spider, wait one, and I didn't realize it, but I kept the handle, the clapper open to the radio. And I sighted at it. When this NVA pulled his head up, I just popped him one time, and his head exploded. And you could just see, including that yellow fat that's in the head, that kind of stuff. And it's enough of a headshot to see that. And then we waited a moment. So obviously he's dead. I get back to Spider, and Spider goes, "Oh man, you just ruined my hearing, you know?" So when we're talking to John, he asked me the question, and then that thought came back to me, that moment in time. And it was, I said, today's the first day I can truly say I know that I killed somebody. Because before, when it's in the jungle like that, it's unclear. There might be a degree of ambiguity, but here it was clear. And but it's like Spider said, had they had the chance, they would have killed you in a second. They wouldn't have thought about it. And this is where more or less the rubber meets the road, because the communist forces were there to dominate, and they'll dominate at any cost. And the reason why we were there was because communism is just so different. Even my guys on the team, they knew South Vietnam was corrupt. They knew it, but they preferred to live with a corrupt government they knew and they could deal with and get around most situations, as opposed to the communists who just come in, you will do it our way or you die. And so that was it right there. And a friend of mine, during the end of my first tour, he brought out the 91st Psalm, which talked about how the Lord protects you. There'll be 1,000 on your right or 10,000 on your left, and he shields you. It was kind of like, whoa, pretty powerful stuff. So, and even in my second tour, dude, I remember there was a guy, an NVA troop was climbing up into a tree. I could see him. He was looking for our team. And at one point, somebody hands him an RPG. Well, I could tell, because I was maybe over 100 yards, maybe 120 yards away, that the RPG had no round. But he was looking for us, my team. And I had moved away from the team because I was directing airstrikes into the valley. But I could see this dude. Well, at some point, he spotted one of the guys on our team, reaches down, gets the round, puts it in his RPG, and I'm just sitting there. In fact, like you're talking earlier about number of times you have gunfire, I remember extending the stock. It was so rare. But on this target that day, it was February of 70. And I had a guy on my gun sights. And so finally, he brought it up on his shoulder and was starting to aim it. One round, pulled the trigger. And before I did that, I could hear my third grade Sunday school teacher, Mrs. Myrtle Reichert, "Thou shalt not kill," just like you said. But this is war. And it's the balancing factor, because you knew that I said, I don't want to kill you, but can we just talk? No.
Yeah, good luck.
It's just like the people you came up against. There ain't no talking to those folks.
Well, I think that in Vietnam was the same. You know, you look at that Second World War generation in the fight in Europe. You know, you could probably be taken prisoner a lot of the time, but like in Vietnam, there wasn't really something like, you didn't want to be taken prisoner, did you? That's like the last thing you're going to be doing. They're not going to treat you well. You're probably going to get murdered. Well, absolutely, and we knew that they would not be kind to the SOG guys, and there weren't many SOG POWs. In fact, there may not have been any. It may have been only one or two. And one was John Caviani. He was on a radio relay site when it got overrun, and then he earned the Medal of Honor a few years later off of that mission. But no, they you knew they weren't. If we always had a last grenade right here,
carried it. That's my last grenade. And me and a couple of other guys, we all said, we ain't going. We're not going to be a POW, because by then we knew, we had heard what they were doing to our POWs up north. It was horrible.
Yeah, there's different ways to die, obviously, and there's like this idea of being tortured to death, like the Vietnamese, the Viet Cong would do to you, or the MVA, or the Taliban, or the Jaish al-Mahdi. I think the having a grenade for yourself has become, since Vietnam, there's something that I think a lot of soldiers have thought about, and like, obviously there's that element as well of religion in here. It interests me is, suicide is another thing that's kind of like frowned upon in religion, let's say. Frowned upon is quite, I'm putting it very leniently there. Did that worry you, the thought of like what will happen if I pull a pin on myself?
Oh yeah, it crossed my tiny shrinking mind, but I just knew that I didn't want to go through that. And yeah. I think in my own mind is like, okay, if this ever happens, then the only question, I hope I can pull the pin and get the handle off without making a noise, so I can take most of them with me, as many NVA with me as possible.
And you get into heaven on a technicality.
Yeah, there we go.
Like, well, technically I was killing it. I suppose as well, though, it's like, look, I might go to hell for committing suicide, but I'm definitely going to go through hell if I don't do this.
Oh yeah.
It's just, yeah, it doesn't even bear thinking about, honestly. But there's the killing thing, I think, is because now religion, with young generations, it's not so much of a thing. So I don't think it's been in people's minds. But if you've been brought up in that kind of like a churchy environment and stuff, and we've had when we had Captain Dale Dye on, Hue City veteran, he said the same thing, that it crossed his mind and stuff. Has it ever bothered you? Has it ever come up? Has it ever caused you sleepless nights?
No, it's straightforward. I mean, Spider and all the other guys, they always would say, if it's up to them, and that's what it comes down to. And no, I can truthfully say I never lost a night's sleep over it.
Yeah, most people I know, to be honest, lose sleep over the shots that they missed rather than the ones that they took. Because particularly
if somebody else gets hurt because of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, so that guilt over not doing something for your mates rather than doing something to the bad guys. What about taking souvenirs and stuff? Do you ever take any souvenirs from the enemy, or were you never in a position to do so?
No, if we the few times we were that close with bodies and things, my little people would go through the pockets and things looking for anything of intel purposes. But in my case, the few opportunities we had bodies that were that close, we were more secure, worried about security, and like I said, my Vietnamese would take care of it, look for any kind of intel.
Yeah, because it's a different, it's not like you were going through clearing positions, is it? I mean, you guys were getting surrounded and then having to get the fuck out of there.
Oh yeah.
All right, guys, just going to hit pause for a second because we are brought to you by the Royal British Legion. Without them, there is no podcast. So you know what I've done? I've got my laptop in front of me and I'm going to have a quick dive on the British Legion website, see what's going on there. So what I've done is, very simply, I've put in Royal British Legion in the old Google, or you can put it into other search engines. Other search engines are available. And I've gone on the site. So let's have a look what's on here, shall we? Right, we've got, in the nice top right corner, we've got donate. That speaks for itself. Royal British Legion do a lot of good work. If you want to donate to them, there you go. There's the Poppy Shop in the top right hand corner. Remembrance Sunday is coming up. Remembrance Day is coming up. Go to the Poppy Shop. Support the British Legion by getting a poppy. You can even download the poppy. Download and print our iconic Remembrance Poppy to display at home and show your support for the Armed Forces community. Donate and download. Simple as that, guys. To be fair, their website is looking very nice. I might have a look to see who designs their website, because this is very, very tasty. We got pictures of people smiling, holding poppies. That's very inspiring. A virtual poppy run. Run, walk or jog any distance. whenever and wherever it suits you. It's free to register and your fundraising will support the Poppy Appeal. Sign up today. How about that? Our response to the COVID-19 outbreak. Read our full update. How about going over and checking that out? As you can see from my breathlessness, guys, there is loads of stuff on the site to go and check out. So just slap Royal British Legion into your search engine or at Royal British Legion on social media. Head over there, check them out. Everything from the Poppy Field, the virtual Field of Remembrance. It's all on there, guys. Please sponsor them, support them. Please support them, which is kind of sponsoring, I suppose, because they do so much work for veterans and their families. We owe them a lot. So head over there, guys. Royal British Legion. All right, let's get back to John and the rest of the podcast. So one of the things I always find interesting about soldiers, John, is like there's always, you got your uniform and everything, but guys always find a way to try and make it cool and try and make it unique and try and make it theirs. What was that? We call that alley in the British Army. You're trying to make yourself look alley. What was there anything in particular that you did to your equipment or something like that you did to kind of really, something outside the regulations that you did to be cool?
Well, we stylized our jungle fatigues a little bit. And of course, if you're really cool, we used to wear the tiger stripes, but we usually wore them in camp because the tiger stripes are cool. Some guys would even go so far as to get them tailored. So they have a tailor fit tiger stripe. So it would be cool. It was cool for photo sessions, but they weren't any good in the field because some were too thin. They'd tear too quickly. Some were too thick. So when they got wet, you get crotch rot out of them. And they just wouldn't dry fast enough. So we had a fatigue. We'd have 2 pockets sewed in the center where we go to the tailor. And that way you put maps, the mask, the moret, the morphine syrettes, and then in each arm there would be another pocket that we had sewn in so that we have quick access to pin flares, things like that. And that was about the only thing. Nothing really styling because you're trying to keep it low profile, keep it dark, keep that green fatigue look,
No big like felt suits or anything like that, bright pink felt suit. So what did you pass it up that, because what you've said there is some very useful kind of modifications on the gear.
Sure.
Did that get passed up the chain of command and ever come into, because I don't remember seeing anything so right now the shirts that you have for combat now do have, again, you've got those pouches and stuff now on them. But that wasn't the case when I first joined up in 2000. So it seems to be one of the things that they went back to. Did that ever become something that they used before going back to this more kind of parade ground look, or was it never was it always something you had to get tailored?
Well, you always have your combat attire versus what you wear in base, and I think that there's a difference because when you adjust your gear, what you're going to wear to the field, it is different than what you're just going to have normally. Plus you have your Class A's, your dress uniform, your inspection uniform, and you have to wear the berets for inspections, but when you're going to battle, that stays back at base camp because we had no IDs, nothing.
So what about you say no IDs? Were guys, if guys had tattoos, were they allowed to have tattoos and that kind of thing?
Back then, no.
Right, that's interesting.
Yeah, in the 60s, the tattoos were basically forbidden, particularly with SAW.
So what about the just kind of thinking about, obviously you're spending a lot of time in the jungle, like you said, you're drinking from rivers sometimes and all that kind of thing. Did you ever get malaria or any other kind of illnesses when you're there? Did you ever get really sick?
Well, I got really sick once. I got amoebic dysentery, and so you get the runs of both ends, right? And my worst day, from the morning until noon, I went out to the head 26 times, and I stopped counting after 26. It was just that bad. And I lost a lot of weight. I went down to 140 or something.
And you're 6', what are you, 6'2" or something?
Yeah, 6'2".
Yeah. God.
And then my fighting weight was about 170, 173, somewhere around there.
Right.
But they lose 25, 30 pounds. And the medics go, you just got to let it run. Drink some Coke, a little bit of this, try to keep moisture down. But anything went down, it just came right back.
Did people get sick out there a lot in those conditions?
Well, some people took the anti-malaria pills. I took them for a while, then I stopped because there were some side issues with those, which I was uncertain about. So, but people ran the normal course. Some people would get malaria. If they did, depending how bad it was, they might be out several weeks, and some may not ever come back because of it. So in my case, I was very fortunate. I recouped, regrouped, and came back after the amoebic dysentery. I never had anything else besides that, other than like hay fever with the vegetation, things like that.
Do you have a pretty strong constitution? Because you look like, what are you now? Are you in your 70s now? You look fit as hell.
74.
74. You look fit.
I walk every day. Gotta get a couple miles in, 3 or 4 miles.
What about on in SOG? Did you? Because obviously special forces use a lot of dogs now. Did you guys use them back in Vietnam?
Never.
All right.
No. Some of the aid camps and some of the base camps would have a dog. Like we had a couple of dogs. We had dumb shit and motherfucker.
Right.
These are our two dogs. And some of the times our guys would get them drunk, and we lost both of them in the minefield because they lived up to their names. They just weren't very bright
That's
dogs.
A tragic story. Right. I need a fun story after that one. Now I've thought about these two little pooches getting spread apart all over a minefield. John, one of my favorite stories about you is your rope ladder story. When you were getting extracted. Can you tell us that one, please?
When I got upside down?
Yes. Yeah. Can you tell us that one? Because this is the story where I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is the one that really kind of like jaw dropped me. So can you? I'm just going to let you run with this one because I'm just going to enjoy the moment.
All right. Well, yeah, this is one of those embarrassing moments in time, but this was November of '68, and we were having a hard time getting into a target. Like what had happened previously was, we would in the morning go to a target and get shot out of primary, secondary, alternate LZs. Come back, have lunch, get a new target. Same thing would happen. We went on. Sometimes we went like 2-3 days in a row. And that can wear a team out because, you got the long helicopter flight. Then you got the adrenaline rush 3 times, getting shot at or getting shot out, whatever. And then going back to base. So somebody came up with an idea. Let's get a daisy cutter with 2,000-pound bomb, find a patch of jungle, drop it, and then rappel in. And so our team was trained in rappelling. Most of our guys were parachutists. They were jump qualified. And so sure, let's try it. So the idea was Cubby would go out, find a big patch of jungle with no obvious trails, drop a 2,000-pound bomb, and then rappel in right behind it. So the first day we went out, they dropped a 2,000-pound bomb, and this is a king bee now. So I'm on the king bee. This one had steps. So it's 2 steps. I'm out on the steps. I got the rope behind my back. The king bee's going in, and just as we're going towards the target, there's a secondary explosion, a tertiary explosion. Well, then the Cubby told him to pull out. And what had happened, somehow that bomb being dropped in the middle of the jungle hit an NVA cache. So to this day, the NVA, Ho Chi Minh, the boys are going, how'd they ever find this one? So we did it the next day. So this time, the bomb goes in. I rappel into the target. Halfway down the rope, I can hear 2 people talking to each other that are on both sides of the blown out area. Now, not all the trees went down, so they couldn't land the helicopters. So I'm rappelling halfway down. I can hear these guys talking. So I get down as fast as I can. I get down to the ground, take the rope out, and then get behind a log. And then I gave them the signal to cancel the mission because we're compromised. People are there already. I can hear them talking. Within a few minutes, I could see an NVA coming down, a uniform, have brief contact with him, and then there's more talk. I can hear people talking literally across the LZ. So when there's a gunfire, the king bee left. But fortunately, Captain Tuong, the king bee pilot, turned around and came back. They dropped the ropes down, and I hooked in, again, the Swiss seat. And the SOP was you hook in with a D-ring on your chest, there's another D ring. You hook into that on the rope. So if you get shot, you don't get shot out of the rig. At least your body will be there. And then when you land, the medics can work on you if you're still alive. So as I'm getting hooked in, the king bee lifts up right away. And so as I'm getting lifted off the ground, I'm holding the rope, but I didn't hook into my D ring. And then they opened fire. So I'm shooting at them. I fired at them 79 round. And then as we're lifting up, Captain Tuong heard the gun sound, and he didn't lift me all the way out of the jungle. He started moving, and I'm like the human pinball, like bing, 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 ricocheting off these trees back and forth, trying to hold on to the rope because I know I didn't hook the damn D-ring. We break out of the jungle, and then I try to hook into the D-ring, but I can't. We're going now full speed, whatever, 75. I think a king bee can do like over 100 knots. So we're talking maybe 80, 90 miles an hour. And you know what that's like. And you just can't hook in. So my arms and the crook of my arms had become bloodied because of getting ricocheted around the trees and stuff. And so at one point I would change arms to hold on to the rope. Well, I hit an air pocket and it flipped me upside down.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. At that moment, all my web gear and my rucksack, the weight of it all came back and began to choke me. And so I'm getting choked to death by my web gear. I can't unhook it. I'm trying to unhook it. I'm upside down. I got my legs spread like a New York City hooker. And because the Swiss seat is now at my knees, it's not on my waist anymore. When I go upside down, all that weight's there.
Oh, my God.
And so I'm signaling to Henry King, my buddy up in the King Bee, hey, get this thing down. And it went on. At one point, I could feel like I'm going to pass out. And right before I passed out, my life flashed before my eyes. I even saw the newspaper, our hometown newspaper, the Trenton Times, and it said, local boy dies in Vietnam. And I was really pissed because I knew I didn't die in Vietnam. I died in Laos, damn it. And, and when the war started, all the casualties were above the fold on the front page. So that happened. My life flashed for a couple of almost bad scenes with car accidents. All that flashed through my mind, and I passed out. Fortunately, just as I passed out, I thought I felt elephant grass, but I wasn't sure. And what I remember was Henry King came out, opened up my web gear, took off my backpack, threw me into the King Bee. And I remember my head bouncing off the metal floor. And it was like the most welcome pain I'd ever had in my life. Glad to have my head hurt from bouncing on the floor. But what I didn't realize was Henry left all my web gear, my Car 15, my M79, as well as my SOG knife. It's still in Laos somewhere on top of some hilltop. But so the lesson is when you're on a Swiss seat, hook into your D-ring or bad things can happen to you. In my case, fortunately, Captain Tuong was able to get the aircraft down close enough. So when I passed out, I only fell maybe 10, 15 feet, something like that.
So you actually fell out? You did slip out of it?
I passed out.
Whoa. I mean, you could have been killed just when pinballing through those trees.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many instances there that could have ended badly. Then that's not the way anyone wants to go, falling out of the sky. Oh, my God. That's just... Because that's one of those things where, like, you probably prepared yourself to die in combat, right?
Exactly. See, you like to say, okay, if I died, I just killed 100 guys, and the 101st guy that and the enemy troop killed me. Okay, that's the honorable death. But this,
choked to death with your own web gear.
Yeah, choked to death by your own web gear. It's like because you didn't do your SOP, and we trained on that. Spider wore our ass out training on those things, and we did it with teams, infill, exfil, just for that moment in time.
Well, no, as I say, no plan survives contact with the enemy. So there we go. You mentioned these guys, John, like, guys like Spider and you mentioned Frenchman. I know, unfortunately, he passed away recently. How much contact did you have with guys in the years, like the close years to like the first few years to you coming back, and then how much contact with them have you had through like the last few decades? Oddly
enough, it wasn't a lot. There were just a few key people like Spider Parks, because he stayed in. He made it a career. He became a command sergeant major. Then Eldon Bardwell, we stayed in contact over the years. Eldon was an E4. He earned the Distinguished Service Cross running recon out of CCN on his second tour of duty. The Frenchman, Lynn Black, and Rick Howard, John Peters. In the beginning, it would be maybe a phone call. And in Spider, something like we didn't hear from right away. But over time, we get a letter from Eldon. And then Doug and I were pretty close for maybe 10 years. Then I moved, my parents moved, and then we lost contact. And Doug and I reconnected around 2000 or 1999. And then Eldon Bars and I, like I said, stayed in touch. Lynn, over time, would reach out, or I'd call him. He's working at Boeing at the time. And then Spider called me back in 83. He said there's a Special Operations Association, that's SOG Recon, and you got to join. Okay, Sergeant Major. So I joined, and through the association, met people like Rick Estes, other men that we served with, and over time we have an annual reunion. Although this year it's going to be virtual because of that China virus stuff, but the men I named are people that I've stayed in contact with since. Now it's a little hard talking to Doug since he's up there running recon with the Lord.
Do you when you pray? Do you pray? Do you like? I mean, I'm not a really religious guy myself, but do you think, is it something that you feel like you do still have a connection with these guys?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean it's spiritual, and then also you believe that there is a greater power out there, and don't understand how this greater power thinks and works, but you got to have faith in it, Like with our move, we just said, hey, we're going to move, and we prayed about it, and we are praying about it. We know and hope someday it'll work out. We'll get an answer.
Do you think that having faith in like one part of your life allows you to have a lot more uncertainty in other parts?
Oh, absolutely. Because you got to believe in something. You just can't go running down the trail of life without having some kind of a foundation somewhere.
Do you think that's maybe like what a lot of the problems in society and stuff are now? People don't have something that they really believe in.
That could be part of it. And then, we've had, I believe that there's been a massive effort against Western society in general for years. That's been going on, and some that's finally beginning to come out. There's a couple of interesting books and that have come out for people that really talk about what the efforts are by the Russians and communists, and then now our good friends to the Middle East that you all have come up against, and this one world order. Somehow, anybody that's against America all works against America or Great Britain or Australia, where there's been years of success with freedom, as we know it.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. The freedom is a blip in the history of mankind. It's not the norm. People think that this is the way that it's always been. It's fucking not, and it can go very quickly. What I find very illustrative or very interesting is about, people think of, right, the Vietnam War, it happened, these are the years that it happened, and then it was over. Or this is the Iraq War, these are the years it happened, and it's over. The Russia and China, they don't think like that. They don't go, oh, this is the war for free. They are constantly, like, they don't see it in the same way that we do. And I think that lack of understanding is what's kind of put us on the back foot at the moment. Absolutely.
You throw in the communist side of it. I mean, the Chinese they always thought in terms of centuries, 1 century at a time. And then you throw in the communist doctrine, the brutality. I mean, any leader like Mao Zedong, who doesn't mind killing off 30 to 45 million of his own people just to have a new policy. It's like, and Stalin, same. I mean, who killed more of their own people? Stalin, Mao Zedong. I mean, those kind of discussions, those aren't taught that way anymore.
No. I mean, what you're talking about there is the Great Leap Forward, right? Is that one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Great Leap Forward. Right. Talk about propaganda that's so wrong.
Yeah, it seems crazy because we're not even talking about war here. We're talking about just somebody who has an idea, and that idea if you go against, like, someone can't stand up and go, hey, sorry, sir, these facts don't add up. This is going to be a disaster. Because if you say that, you die. So so I think, like you were saying, it's like something between 30, 45, maybe even 50 million people starved to death in China because of these policies of Mao. And like, that's half as many people as died in the Second World War, but we just don't talk about it because it would be politically incorrect to point that out, which is crazy.
I know. It drives me crazy.
Well, me too, mate. So,
absolutely.
So one of the things I wanted to ask, I know it's a bit of a personal question, but one of the things I do, I sometimes wonder about is, you go through, you go through war with your friends, and it is a band of brothers. It's a group of friends who are special, like you have a bond that you're never going to make with anybody else that hasn't been through that with you. But none of us escape death. It comes for all of us in the end. So how is that experience compared to, say, because we all lose, unfortunately, we lose our grandparents, we lose our parents. What is it like when you start to lose those comrades years after the war?
Painful. You have these people, particularly like with the Frenchman, Eldon Bardwell, people you really knew and respected tremendously over a lifetime. Men that earn their respect with you, like you said, comrades in arms. So you have that special relationship, and then one day they're here and one day they're gone. It's kind of like, welcome to the real world. And you just, did you ever hear Joe Galloway's? He paid homage to helicopter pilots and crews. It's called God's Own Lunatics. And if you haven't heard, it's only 2.5 minutes. But you Google God's Own Lunatics. But Joe talks about how ground pounders love helicopter pilots, their courage, how they hang in there. But at the very end, the message was, and I believe this is apropos to your question, which is, if those men were here today, those we lost, if they were here today, they would tell you, live life to the fullest. And so I absolutely believe that. If Eldon and Doug were here, they say, thanks for mourning. Thanks for having the funeral service. Thanks for burying me. Now get on with your life. I'm not there anymore, so you got to enjoy it or do the best you can. With that thought in mind, that's why we're going to be doing book 4 and 5, Solid Chronicles, trying to come back to get more of these stories out on the men that we're losing.
Yeah. Did you ever, like these guys, you're talking about, did any of them struggle when they came back? And did any of them struggle? And did any of these, the SOG guys that you know about, did any of them take their own lives?
Oh, sure. Yes, sadly, one was Jeffrey Junkins. He had 4 or 5 tours in Vietnam.
Wow.
His last tour, when I went back to Vietnam, Jeff and I had served together at Phu Bai. And he had a really, really haunting experience. He and a friend of his were working in a minefield, installing new mines. And his friend, another SF guy, made a mistake somehow where a bouncing Betsy, and that's the mine that goes up in the air and then it explodes. And this guy put this mine in, it exploded, it killed him. The force of the explosion picked Jeff up and moved him, and he landed on top of another bouncing Betsy.
Oh, God.
And he laid there knowing that his buddy was dead. And then they had the Green Berets that were in camp had to take hours to get out to Jeff and then to get him off of the mine so it wouldn't explode. And 2 days later, we're playing poker. He came down to Phu Bai, and he's sitting there, and he put his hand up to his head, and he goes, he said something like, oh, shit. And he's like, you could tell he was really upset and really impacted by what he had. And so one of the guys goes, what is it? What the hell's bothering you? Because we all knew he had been in the minefield. He survived it somehow by the grace of the Lord. And he goes, He says, I keep pulling the bone fragments. I forget the guy's name. I keep pulling the bone fragments of him out of my scalp.
Oh, God.
So when I went back to Vietnam for my second tour, Jeff was going back for his 5th. and we went to CCN together. His tour of duty ended when he got blown out of a helicopter. They had been on a mission, gets distracted, he gets blown out, had a bad hip, bad back. He had fought with the VA, and so finally got an 100% rating, but it took him over 10 years to get it. Yeah. And in 99, he rented a new apartment. His mother was living with him. His legs were so bad that in the morning, when he woke up, his mother had to come in and lift his legs and turn him around, help him to sit up in bed. It was just too much. And he had all these VA pills. So one day he just wrote a little note, took the pills, and we buried him in 99.
Yeah, sorry to hear that, man.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think the VA does enough?
The VA has come a long ways, particularly under this administration. There's been more progress. And, part of the trouble is you have to advocate for yourself. So that's my primary care is the VA. And I've been using them ever since, now it's been over 10 years. So I go in every year for physical, get the flu shots. Anything else that comes up, we deal with it through the VA. And I can't complain. There's always could be done. Don't get me wrong. There have been mistakes, tragic mistakes. But we've also had committees where we've worked, like in San Diego where I lived. We had a committee that met once a month with the directors for the VA Medical Center, for benefits, and for cemeteries. And any veteran could come and make a direct complaint to them at these meetings. So situations where, like in Phoenix, where they had veterans dying in their beds because they couldn't get proper service or couldn't get treatment, that never would have happened in San Diego. Because if there's any kind of thing like that going on, we would have heard about it, and then we would have told the directors right away.
What do you think about this? We hear the figure 22 a day a lot, about suicides. Do you think that that's always been a thing, or do you think that there is some kind of something that's happening differently in the last 20, 30 years or so that's causing that?
Well, I'm not an expert. I sit back and watch it. And in fact, that VA committee I was on, that was a top priority for our committee, was trying to do more, increase awareness. I mean, there's even a couple in San Diego area, as well as other cities. There are parents that have lost service members to suicide. They came back. They get nonprofits. The nonprofits work with the VA. But the key thing is when these soldiers, sailors, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, airmen, when they make up their mind to take their life, they know how to do it. And all the efforts trying to increase awareness, try to get people to talk more about it, a lot of it comes back to the individual. But I also think, I'm not a sociologist, so I can't put my finger, but a lot of the guys today are different than what they were 30 or 40 years ago. And maybe it comes back to Christianity or faith, or maybe, as Ronald Reagan said, democracy is only safe for one generation. You have to keep fighting to keep it. And part of that is when it comes to soldiers and sailors, et cetera, that do this, I think there's been some kind of a softening. But I don't want to use a term, but something has changed dramatically where
I get what you mean.
Now suicide is more acceptable, and people, after serving our country, they decide to come out and to take that ultimate step. When one of my best friends has lost his son that way, served with the Rangers, airborne, had a great contract job with the government. Something came up, and he took his life. It was just tragic. And the impact on the families and friends. Oh, my God. There is help out there. I mean, the VA, there's hotlines, there's committees, there's any kind of outreach you want, and they'll be there to talk to anybody.
Well, I get what you're saying. I do think there's been like this erosion of like masculinity in like the last like 30 years. It's almost like, like you get punished and made to feel guilty if you want to be like to be like, let's call it a chest beating man. And I think that when you break people down and people are living on their own in apartments in cities when there's not community and all that kind of thing, I think we're supposed to live in groups, and we're supposed to be doing things in groups, and we're supposed to be like, we're not supposed to be this faceless society that we have going on. And because I just look at the veteran thing is on the way up with suicides, but then so is suicide for young men across the board. I don't think it's a veteran thing. I think it's a society thing.
Exactly.
I really do.
I agree 100% with that. And then the guys that came back from World War II had social issues. Guys from Korean War, there were men that had issues with all that, and you just didn't hear about it as much. And now with the media, social media, and I'll tell you, we through our committee, we've seen what the director for the VA medical services. I mean, if there's ever any thought or any way to do anything, they're on it. They'll study it and they'll work to improve it. But I think it comes back to the foundation. I like what you're saying. There's been a softening or something has happened. I just don't have a degree in sociology to articulate it better.
Well, I think one of the problems is, John, is like people get told, like you watch any movie about the military now and a veteran, and he'll be like, gun to his head, his hand trembling. And that's not the case for a lot of guys. And like one of the things I'm working on now is I'm doing a comedy about veterans, because we have a great fucking time a lot of the time. It's not all doom and gloom. But like for some guy who's living on his own, he's been taken out of his group, he's living on his own in an apartment, people at work don't get him. If all he's seeing on social media, if all he's seeing on the TV is, hey, you have no hope, then you're going to think, oh, I have no hope.
I agree.
Yeah. So you do seem happy, John. You seem like a very happy man. You've always got a smile on your face when you come on the podcast.
Well, I'm lucky. I'm happily married for 25. Well, tomorrow we celebrate our 26th anniversary. Tomorrow, without my sweetheart, we've been blessed with wonderful children, and so that keeps us going. It keeps me strong. She keeps improving the diet. May not have enough sugar, but we get there.
So like, how important is like diet and exercise and stuff to you? Is this something you take quite seriously?
Yeah, the last few years I haven't done enough exercise, but every day, like I said, I always walk. I always try to get at least 3 to 4 miles in every day, right, just to keep the legs moving. And now that we're here, one of the things I want to do is get back to we used to have a yoga class through a nonprofit we had in Oceanside there. It was free for veterans. It was really nice. I got into it. But then these last few months with the virus and everything and work and getting ready to move, all of that. And I don't do enough upper body, I got to start lifting more.
Yeah. You get the guns going. start polishing the guns. So what makes you, what is it like in general in life? What things make you happy?
Oh, well, family first, and now we've been blessed with 2 grandchildren. It's just amazing. Our grandson is 10 months. Our granddaughter's 9 months. They're beautiful, and you just see them coming along, and to be with them and to think that this all started years ago. Yeah. We had our kids, and now we got these grandkids, and it's just amazing. Yeah. The family thing of it, and just still hanging out with comrades in arms. The friends that remain will be tight. So good friends in life, that's what it's all about.
And then you got the books.
Yeah, we got a couple books, man. I got 3 books out. Like we'll begin working on number 4 soon.
So what's that? Is that going to be Saw Chronicles Part 2?
Part 2. Yeah, I think I'm just going to do the 2, 3, however far we can go. How many we can get together. We got the stories lined up for 2 and 3 now.
Oh wow!
Just got to sit down and write them, get the pictures, and do more podcasts. Maybe become do a little tilt talk, something like that.
Yes, tilt talk. I like it. No, are you gonna get a little studio set up?
I don't know. I'm gonna talk to Jocko first. We just did a couple more last month, and we got 2 more. In fact, we're in the planning stages for 2 more in November. And Jocko Willink is just an amazing man.
Well, that's how he came across you.
Yeah,
we came across you on Jocko. Like, so when you go onto Jocko, Do you find that you get like a big response? Because as much as I'd love to say that this podcast is on the same level as that, he is one of the biggest podcasts in the world. When you go onto those, do you get like a huge influx of messages and stuff from people? And is it like do you get some very do you get a lot of kind of positive reinforcement from that?
Most of it's positive. I mean, there's always a couple of people that aren't happy, and that's just human nature. That's been an amazing thing. I mean, the first one he posted was 180 back in June of last year, 2019.
Was it last year? Was it? Wow.
Yeah. And so since then we've done 6 now. And then he did Dick Thompson, who was another CCN guy. And the SOG stories, I really believe, are unique, and the people are responding to it. And there are young people, and I've been amazed. Yeah. So like now, I never know what Instagram was until last year. I knew what Twitter was because of the president, but I didn't deal with it personally. I still don't. But Instagram. So now, if I post something, there might be anywhere from 1,000 to 4,000 people that respond. I'm like, really?
I'll give you some advice for Instagram. Don't post anything to do with coronavirus or politics, because since I've been doing that, they don't show my stuff. Nobody gets to see my stuff anymore. They ban it.
Is that right?
Because because I have this thing now called, so I have the Veteran State of Mind account has 6,000 followers. My personal account has 23,000 followers. More people see what I post on my Veteran State of Mind account than my other, because they have this thing called the shadow ban. Basically, they restrict who gets to see your account. Because I dared to speak out against the great, against the COVID stuff.
Is that right? The China virus.
Yep. So be careful what you put on there, mate. They can't do it so much when you're speaking, but like they even have like the way that they can search these things is you just use keywords and it will just pick up the keyword and you're done.
Absolutely.
So be careful on that. But I love the idea of you doing a podcast. That would be fantastic. I think that's something that everyone would be behind. I'll let everyone know where they can find you on social media and everything. But if you want to do more podcasts, John, you've always got a home here.
Certainly. And then, Across the Fence and On the Ground and SOG Chronicles, I've been really surprised and happy that people have responded to it today. The war is 50 years ago. Or in this case, 52 years ago was our day in hell. One of many, but one that really sticks out because that's my first major long-term combat, and just amazing experience. I was blessed to survive. I had good Vietnamese, good South Vietnamese Air Force, the aviators. I mean, in Vietnam War, Southeast Asia, to this day, we have 1,568 Americans still listed as missing in action in Vietnam. So that includes Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, a couple in China. And out of that, you got 50 Green Berets from the secret war alone. And we got somebody doing research now. There's over 150 aviators that have died supporting SOG teams on the ground. Air Force, Marine Corps, maybe some Navy, and of course Army. The gunships, the slicks, they always came when we called. And we ground pounders just worship the ground they fly over. They're just amazing men. And valor, oh my God. And you've seen it. You've worked with air assets.
Oh yeah, they're bulls.
And but for our little dirty war, those numbers are really monumental. And you think about 50 Green Berets still missing from the secret war, and the anguish that their families had gone through, not knowing the truth. Many parents have died not knowing the true valor of their son.
Yeah, and you do. I think you do a really great job in giving credit to these people, and that you have immortalized them too by putting them into words. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who's glad that you're going to keep this going with more of the SOG Chronicles, because you've done 3 books now, but I bet you admit yourself that you've barely scratched the surface. And
thankfully, other guys are beginning to write more now, like Nick Brockhausen, Weefew. Oh, his books are just crazy. And of course, Lynn Black did his book, but Lynn's declined any interviews at this point. And those books are amazing books. Lynn's book is WTF, Whiskey, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
Well, I'll put links to everything. You got audiobooks as well. I'll put links so that people can go to your Amazon page. Is that the best place for them to get you? Is it the Amazon page, or is it better for them to get you from your own site?
For the books, particularly for the UK, if they go through Amazon, because if I have to mail them a book, the postage is just insane.
Yeah, it's about $20. I don't make any money.
No, it's about 35 to 50 now from the US to the UK.
Oh, it's nuts because I literally don't make any money on the books I ship to the States, but I don't want to be an asshole and charge people extortionate. You know, that people probably looking at the prices and thinking like $60. Wow, this guy's charging me a fortune. It's like, no, I'm making no money on that.
Yeah, well, that's why I always apologize. I think for the U.S. Postal Service, they're going to charge you this much money for the book just to get shipped. Then the cost of the book.
Well, I recommend the audiobooks too because you read them yourself. And I always think that it's good to listen to an audiobook that's narrated by the author.
Yeah, because across the fence is out. And then, in fact, Amazon is dragging their feet for some reason. And we're hoping to get On the Ground was supposed to come out last month, but it hasn't come out yet. So the second audiobook should be out soon.
All right, awesome. Well, John, thanks so much for coming on today, mate. It's always a pleasure. I hope we get you back soon for another chat because we're not going to run out of stories with you.
In the meantime, I want to pick your brain for some ideas for a Tilt Talk, you know?
You got it. Anytime you want to drop me a line, mate, please do. This will be a pleasure.
Till next time, thank you again.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. John, thank you for coming on. I hope you come back with some more stories soon because I'm not the only one who can't get enough of these Vietnam stories. They are just they're mind-blowing, to be quite honest. And I feel very humbled to have a guest like John coming on the podcast. I mean, fuck me, guys. Just what a tier of men, really, who are operating in that war and, you know, who are carrying out these missions against incredible odds. I just take my fucking hat off to them. You know, just as a soldier, you know, because as a soldier, as a veteran, I think we always identify as soldiers for the rest of our lives, don't we? Just to know what they were going into and that they would keep on doing it. I just have so much respect for them. I'm sure you guys do too. Thank you again to Combat Fuel and Zulu Alpha Straps for sponsoring the podcast. Thank you to the Royal British Legion that made it possible. Guys, if you want to support any of those companies or the charity, then the links to everything is down in the show notes. We got links to stuff on social media. Head over there, check it out. And please support John by purchasing his books and keeping alive the memories of the guys that he fought alongside. It's a real privilege to have him on the podcast, and it's a real privilege to have you guys listening. Thank you so much. I'll catch you next time. Love you. Bye.
You told me not to worry, and you wouldn't break my heart. You told me you were sorry, yeah, my whole world fell apart. You said it's not my fault, and yeah, I've never done you wrong. I'm grinding to a halt, now I can see you're moving on. I promised I'd get better, and I told you things would change. You keep me to the gutter, yeah, I'll never be the same. I've got to let you go, now live your life and spread your wings. And yeah, you put on quite a show and pulled the puppet strings. And are you sure that you don't want me? Remember all the pain, or maybe you should thank me. It's your loss and my gain. I'm leaving now forever, I won't hang my head in shame. But yeah, you've taken me for granted, and you should feel ashamed. You sold a dream to all of us, a dream that we'd all die for, a reason for us all to live and something we could fight for. I might just help a man up to his feet or hold a newborn, but no matter what I do, my hands remembering my rifle, yeah.
Life's hard, I know that, still wouldn't change shit. I wouldn't go back, yeah, I wouldn't go back. Feelings I hold back, memories fade, yeah, they go fast, yeah, they go fast. Good times that come and go, survive the highs and lows. Just take it step by step, I guess, yeah, I suppose. Good times that come and go, survive the highs and lows. Just take it step by step, I guess, yeah, I suppose.